The View hosts have got themselves into hot water again after they did the very thing they purport to be against, undermining women's success. Joy Behar stunned viewers when she said Donald Trump's press secretary, 27-year-old Karoline Leavitt, only secured her position because of her good looks.
I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though. It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
The comment was bizarre, especially coming from Joy Behar, who is as woke as they come and positions herself as a champion of feminism. This online commentator said, disgusting Joy Behar of The View accuses Karoline Leavitt of being hired only because Donald Trump thought she was a 10.
The fallout from The View's latest controversy is proving to be another harsh lesson in what happens when the hosts underestimate their guests. This time, the target was Karoline Leavitt, a young and unapologetically conservative political strategist making waves in the media. When Joy Behar smugly dismissed her as unqualified and implied she was appointed based on her looks, The View once again crossed the line. But while the hosts weren't prepared for the backlash, Leavitt certainly was. She didn't just brush off the insult, she fired back, effortlessly dismantling Behar's condescending remarks and exposing the hypocrisy of The View's so-called feminist narrative.
Let's talk about the fact that Democrats have been labeling President Trump a to democracy for the better half of 10 years. Let's talk about how they have compared him to one of the worst mass in the history of the world, and that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden weaponized the court system and the justice system in this country against Donald Trump in an attempt to imprison him. He sat through a courthouse for 7 weeks this past year, and the Democrats were hoping he would go to jail for it. That is real political that has led to 2 heinous attempts on President Trump's life that, by the grace of God, he was able to escape, and he is here with us today. So yes, President Trump knows a little bit about political because he's experienced it himself. In talking about the tragic realities of war that Liz Cheney and her father Dick Cheney have got this country into is not political. It's talking about the reality of the foreign conflicts that the Washington, D.C. establishment have sold out young Americans to for decades.
Yet, of course, after those attempted attempts on the former president's life, his opponents reached out to him and said they do not accept political. That has been a key difference. I do want to play you.
No, please. His opponents are saying to this very day the same rhetoric that led to those 2 attempts. The second attempted on President Trump's life echoed the sentiment that President Trump is a democracy. And if you're a deranged lunatic and you're mentally ill, you will believe that lie, and yes, you will take political like we have seen in 2 instances against President Trump. Last week, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris said that everyone who showed up to President Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden was a That's despicable, dangerous, divisive rhetoric that is spewed by the Democrat Party every single day. And I am so sick and tired of the media pointing the finger at Donald Trump and saying that he is sowing division in this country. He is not. The media is for pushing hoaxes like the one that you all pushed today, and the Democrat Party is for pushing lies about him. But the good news is Americans don't buy it. And that's why today in 2024, President Trump is more popular than he has been since 2016, because people don't trust the media and they're not buying the Harris campaign's closing argument that he's some great to our democracy, because they lived under him for 4 years as president, and our democracy and our country was stronger than it is today.
Rather than cower in the face of The View's predictable and tired brand of elitist snark, Karoline Leavitt did what so many before her failed to do. She fought back. And she did it with intelligence, poise, and, most importantly, facts. Right from the start, Leavitt refused to let Joy Behar's comments go unchallenged. She made it clear that her success wasn't the product of her appearance, but the result of years of hard work, deep political knowledge, and strong communication skills, qualities that clearly made her a threat to The View's panel of out-of-touch, self-proclaimed intellectuals. She called out the absurdity of reducing a woman's achievements to her looks, especially coming from a show that constantly claims to champion women's empowerment. The hypocrisy was glaring. The View prides itself on lifting women up, Yet the moment a woman doesn't align with their leftist ideology, they demean her in the very way they claim to fight against. And let's be honest, this wasn't just an offhand, catty remark from Bahar. It was part of a larger pattern of The View and the media at large, attempting to delegitimize conservative women by portraying them as unqualified, unserious, or merely decorative. We've seen it before, whether it was Kayleigh McEnany, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or Elise Stefanik. Whenever a young, articulate conservative woman rises to prominence, the media rushes to discredit her. Leavitt's takedown wasn't just a defense of herself, it was a broader statement against the double standards that conservative women continue to face.
She said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Mm-hmm. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world. So please stop using that phrase and talk about, because you don't understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. You're saying about yourself that, you know, hey, that's a terrible thing to be. It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought. That's what we were fighting for, so that you could stand in that podium, so that Catherine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium. So women of all kinds of colors and ilks, wherever they came from, whatever their belief system was, they had the opportunity to bust down that door.
The View did what they always do. Launched a lazy, sexist attack, expecting it to land without consequence. But this time, it backfired spectacularly. Karoline Leavitt didn't just call out the double standard, she made it clear that her position wasn't handed to her. She earned it. Unlike the hosts of The View, who built their careers on talking over guests and catering to a bubble-wrapped audience that already agrees with them, Leavitt had to work her way up in the political world, facing real scrutiny and real competition. She reminded them that while they sit around gossiping and throwing cheap insults, she's actually out there shaping political discourse and making an impact. The moment quickly went viral, with viewers calling out The View for its blatant hypocrisy. Social media exploded with clips of Leavitt shutting down Bahar's remarks, and even those who didn't align with her politically couldn't deny that she had exposed a major flaw in the show's approach to discussing women in politics. The View claims to champion strong, independent women, but only if they toe the party line. The moment a woman refuses to conform to their ideology, she's suddenly reduced to nothing more than a pretty face who doesn't belong at the table. And as if things couldn't get worse for The View, their attempt to embarrass Leavitt ended up making them look foolish. Bahar's snide comment didn't just come off as mean-spirited, it revealed an insecurity within the panel. They couldn't debate Leavitt on her merits, so they resorted to petty personal attacks. Instead of addressing her political viewpoints, they fixated on her appearance, which only made them look weak. It was a textbook case of projection. Rather than acknowledging that a young conservative woman had risen through the ranks based on talent, they spun a false narrative to fit their worldview. Even inside sources at ABC reportedly admitted that the backlash was worse than they had anticipated. Executives were already growing frustrated with the show's endless cycle of controversy, and this latest incident only added to their list of PR headaches. One insider even hinted that some higher-ups were beginning to question whether Bahar, who has been on the show for decades, was doing more harm than good. While The View thrives on stirring up debate, There's a fine line between controversial and problematic, and this moment crossed that line in a way the network could no longer ignore. But what really cemented the disaster was how Leavitt handled it afterward. She didn't whine. She didn't play the victim. Instead, she used the moment to prove exactly why she's a force to be reckoned with.